Welcome to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I'm your host, Alison Price, and I'm here once more with my co-host, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hi, Alison. It's great to be here again.
Thank you so much for being here once more. Now, in this episode, we're going to be talking about getting started in astrology, and this was a particular request we had from one of our fans.
Yes.
Arwynne, perhaps you could tell us a little about that.
Yes, actually, I had a request from one of our, I'm just going to say super fans, because this is someone who listens to every episode and has feedback and comments and questions. And this person has been inspired by our podcast to actually pursue a career as an astrologer.
This is amazing.
It's amazing. It's inspiring and wonderful and flattering and
heartwarming. It's heartwarming.
Yeah, and he has written and said how much he has been affected by your books, which he has ordered multiple of your books, which is amazing. And that he just really wants to know more, wants to pursue this. And so the first thing I thought was, we could do a whole podcast about that. I mean, more than one, but let's start with just the basics. What do you need to know? What are the first few things? I mean, you as a consulting astrologer would advise someone who just wants to get started.
Someone who wants to learn astrology.
How do you get started as an astrologer?
So I think I've been thinking about this, and I've actually broken it into three particular stages. So the first off is that as I call it as an aspiring astrologer, you need to start with some books. Yeah. Let me tell you, there are hundreds of astrology books out there. And I have whittled it down. I've got a recommendation of 5 astrology books that will set you up to be a good astrologer.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to list them now. So the first book that, if you're going to be an astrologer, the first book you really need to get is an ephemeris. There's no question about it. And I recommend the Purple book by Pottinger. I'll put a link below this podcast. That you need an ephemeris. I've got one. Arwynne's got one. Anyone who's an astrologer has an ephemeris, and definitely get that for starters, because it's almost like bedtime reading. Mm-hmm. When you first get your ephemeris, you need to break it open, pour into it, and think, what is this? What is this? Oh, hang on, that's Jupiter. Oh, hang on, we've got a new moon next month. Right. Oh, suddenly I'm seeing a pattern. Yeah. And even though it's actually a book full of data, it's actually something where you can say, and you and I, as astrologers, we are looking at, I'm looking in my ephemeris virtually every day, because I'm thinking, what about this? What about that? When isn't Pluto doing this? When is the new moon? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. When is the exact positions? And so on. So the first book you need is an ephemeris.
Yeah, and I don't know about anyone else, but like as a Virgo, perhaps, the colored highlighter pens definitely come in handy. Because,
full color.
Yeah, full color, because then you want to highlight the major aspects that are happening. You want to highlight the eclipses, anything that comes up that's an important pattern.
Yes.
Because it's basically like looking at a massive Excel spreadsheet, but more interesting.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned. And anything that stands out to you, oh, wow, this is, Mars is going to be conjunct Uranus. Wow, that's huge. Or,
Mercury retrograde.
Mercury retrograde. Yeah. You want to highlight these things so that you can see them. And then you kind of can see, oh, these recur at certain, we know they recur as far as Mercury retrograde with a few months, but it's just as this book goes along, you want to actually highlight them so that you can actually feel as the pages turn that these things, recur.
This is it.
On a regular basis.
Now, in my ephemeris, I have particular colors for the planets and colors for the signs, and we'll do an episode on color shortly because that is something that it's a visual representation of what's actually happening in a complex book. Yeah. And if you can bring color in, you can use the other side of your brain rather than just the thinking. You can use the artistic side as well. Totally. So I always believe in using color in these things.
100%.
Ephemerises last for me about 5 years. After that, they're starting to fall apart, and you've just got to order another one. But the purple one goes from 1950 to 2050. So it does cover most people who are probably, 60, 70 years old at the moment. You can cast their charts and so on. So it's a good book. And of course, over time, I don't know if you have, but I have the ephemerises going further back as well and further forward because we're astrologers and this is what we do. So your number one book is get an ephemeris.
Yeah.
The number 2 book, when you actually have money to burn, is I'm recommending Sue Tompkins' The Contemporary Astrologer's Handbook. It is the best book for a beginner astrology. I think it's about $30 US. You can get it all from Amazon. The link will be below. And this is solid, up-to-date, contemporary psychological astrology.
Yeah.
It's easy reading. It's laid out simply, and it's a great book to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I recommend that as well. The 3rd book I'm recommending is Priscilla Costello's The Practical Astrologer. She's a Virgo. It's called The Practical Astrologer.
So many astrologers are.
So many are. It's a slim book, but it's simply going over everything. Quite a cookbook, but again, it was probably written in the last 10 years, and it's a simple, straightforward book. And once more, you can just get that from Amazon. The link will be below.
Yes.
Now, the 4th book I recommend, because how much money do you have to spend on books, is going to be Aspects in Astrology, again by Sue Tompkins. It's a brilliant book about aspects because that is where the energy is flowing. If the energy is the planets, the connections between planets is through the aspects, and this is how it's working for us. So if I've got the sun square the moon and you've got the sun square the moon, it's not the same because we've got different signs, different houses, and so on. And she explains this beautifully. But if you can get a grip on aspects, you've got an amazing grip on interpretation.
And honestly, that is why her name sounds so familiar to me, because I don't have all of her books, but that's the one I have. And, I don't have the there are some astrology Bibles. Like there's Planets in Houses by Robert Hand. He also did a Planets Aspects, huge book, but it's Sue Tompkins. That's the one that I have.
Solid, yeah. If you're a modern 21st century astrologer, go here.
Yeah.
And then the 3rd astrology book I'm recommending people get is called the 12 Houses by Howard Supportas.
Got that one too. Yeah, awesome.
It's an old book. He has passed on, but it's solid houses interpretation, and it's going to give you an absolute backbone to your astrology understanding.
Yeah, and he's such a good writer. It is solid, and all of these are sort of these mid-century giants of astrology around the same generation as Stephen Arroyo, as Liz Green, and
he was, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And they were just these, baby boomer sort of generation, but incredibly intellectual, incredibly rigorous, and very well written, very
solid astrology, no waffle.
No, and not a lot of BS, like just very solid psychological astrology, the kind of thing people want to know, about, because they want to know about themselves. Like most people who are studying astrology to begin with, they want to know about themselves, about their family, about their friends. Yeah. And then, the expanding circles go out after that.
Exactly.
But solid psychology. Yeah. It's very important.
Yeah. So these are the 5 books I recommend. And I believe that for $100 US, you can get all 5 books and honestly devour them. Yeah. From there, you could, my 6th book I would recommend, although it's not really on my list, is Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos. That is an ancient book, but it has, I know.
I was going to say deep cut.
But it has got insights that is the basis of what we're learning today. It's not one of my first books on the list, but it's the 6th one.
Yeah, and it's literally why we still have astrology to this day.
Yes. Solid guy.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look on my astrology bookshelf over there, and in my main, every book on my bookshelf is astrological if it's not gardening. But the point is that you can end up buying astrology books that you read and you think, I didn't really get anything out of that. So I'm just trying to avoid all that by recommending, if you get these first 5 books, knock yourself out. From then, build your library.
Right. And then you'll have an interest that will actually expand. Maybe you'll decide that you're super interested in historical cycles, like my personal interest.
Yes.
I mean, in my top 5 would be Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas, which is an amazing book about the outer planet cycles and how they affect the cycles of history, all the way back to, like every world war and all of these, just utterly fascinating psychological and historical and just the cycles of the transpersonal planet. Anyway,
exactly.
So that's a personal thing, but if you if you have this basis, then you'll be able to expand it to your personal interest.
Build a solid foundation. Build your library on a solid foundation.
Yeah.
Get books that make sense and are contemporary astrological thought, and then develop, because once you book one astrology book, you'll never stop buying them.
Yes.
Even now,
it's like tattoos.
Even now I've got books coming in from Nick Campion. I buy all his books.
Oh, he's
but these are advanced.
Yeah.
These are not for your beginner astrologer.
Right.
Your beginner astrologer can just get the basics down, get a grip on what's going, spend a year understanding these books, and then decide, I'm going down this road.
And as soon as you find authors whose voice really speaks to you, that is another thing that really will drag you in and kind of keep you interested. Like we always talk about Stephen Arroyo, and this is because the way he writes is so accessible and so personal and so just engaging that it really just sucks you in and makes you interested in astrology. It makes you fascinated to know more about your friends, your family, the world, celebrities, historical figures.
Yes.
And as soon as you find someone who piques your interest like that, whether it's Stephen Arroyo or Liz Green or someone more modern, Nick Campion, whatever. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to buy all of their books, but Stephen Forrest.
But we do.
He publishes amazing essays still to this day, like on his website, and in every month you can be absorbing like almost a book's worth of information.
Exactly.
So,
well, this is it. I mean, talking about websites is a whole other thing. But the point is, if you're beginning, get a solid foundation. Don't go down a rabbit hole too soon. Yeah, because it will take you off track.
You want to get the basics down, and then you can make your own rabbit hole.
Exactly. So that's my recommendation. Of course, we can do some advanced recommendations later on about other things, but particularly these are the solid ones for part 5.
For sure.
So that was the first part of what I was saying is get some books. And I also want to say get your chart correctly calculated. Make sure you've got your chart correctly calculated as well. And then the second part to getting started as an astrologer is actually getting some formal classes. And this what I mean by this is you're actually going to be paying for classes or conferences or retreats, but you're going to be paying to spend time with experienced astrologers sharing their knowledge with you. So it could be through classes. I mean, I do private classes, but you can get classes really anywhere. It could be through retreats, and I do recommend here, if you're in the US, Stephen Forrest's retreat. I think it's in Sedona, Arizona. Look him up. I'll put a link below the podcast. He offers, actually it's evolutionary. However, it is going to give you an insight to a different way of doing astrology. Yeah. And then I want to recommend 2 conferences. If you're interested, again, in astrology. One is in the US, and I'm going to say Norway because I've been there. It's just down in Seattle. I know it's not for everyone. However, it's on the list. UAC used to do it, but they don't seem to be doing it anymore. ESAR sometimes do it, but never mind. So a conference, find a local astrology conference. And the second conference I'm recommending more highly than anything else is the Faculty of Astrological Studies, their summer school in August every year in Oxford in England. Mm-hmm. If you've got the funds, you need to go there and immerse yourself in astrology. It will change your life. So it depends, where are you and how much are you prepared to invest financially in your astrological education.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I can't say too much about that. So what do you think about going to your local astrology? Go where astrologers are, but you get to a point where you have to pay for this knowledge.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so important to actually, I mean, we were so lucky, like the two of us, to just stumble upon each other. Like I know we've told this story in the past, but it bears repeating.
Yes.
That when we met, like 10 years ago.
12 years ago.
12 years ago, I answered an ad in meetup.org. I was trying to meet new people and do new things. And I had just moved into this new building. I've not always, but I've, lived in downtown Vancouver for the last 20 years. Yeah. And I was looking for some astrology people to just kind of
your tribe.
Commit. Yeah, exactly. Find your tribe, right? And I answered an ad in meetup.org, and we met at Waves Coffee, which is literally 2 blocks from my home. And we were the only people in the room. Yep. And I was like, hi, I'm super interested in astrology, blah, blah, blah. And I know I always say this, but it happened. I was like, I listened to this or that podcast, and you were like, what's a podcast? Yeah. And then we started talking about doing a podcast together. Yes. I think we didn't talk about it at the very first meeting, but literally the second meeting we started could we do a podcast together? What would that look like? Blah, blah, blah. And the funniest thing was when we left that meeting after talking, at a mile a minute, just the two of us in this room for an hour.
It's the Virgo, Leo, Scorpio.
Virgo, Leo, Scorpio. We started to leave, and we were walking out in the same direction. We kept walking, and we were like, "Oh, you live this way. I live this way too." And we literally ended up in the same building. Wait, you live here? I live here too. It's bizarre. Like, we live in downtown Vancouver, and we just happen to live in the same building. Like, what?
Yes.
Anyway.
Probably 20 meters from each other, and who knew?
Exactly. And
talk about serendipity.
Incredible serendipity. And so find your tribe is what we're saying.
Yes, yes. Go where astrologists are, join your local astrology group, go to a meeting.
Yeah. And I'm not an extrovert. Like, Alison is a Leo. She's an extrovert extraordinaire. I am a Virgo. I am not an extrovert, although I'm like a vampire. If you invite me in, I'll never stop talking. as Alison knows.
No.
But like, you can't underestimate the importance of actually just finding your tribe and finding other people who will be able to just
talk your language
and about you will learn so much just talking about your own chart or the other person's chart with each other.
Yes.
It is so valuable and not worrying that you're burdening the haters with your astrological babble, whatever. No, just talking to people who are like, yes, oh my God, yes, and.
Yes, they've already got the buy-in to astrology.
Yeah.
You don't have to explain yourself.
Yes.
You are welcome in these groups.
Yeah.
Usually you have to pay. We had 2 groups in Vancouver, the Astrology 10 and the Astrology Guild.
Valley.
And whatever. You have to pay to be a part of this because they've got their fees and this and that. But the minute you're paying money for meeting people or taking classes or going to conferences, that's when your astrology is going to take a different direction because you're going to, you are going to move out of the, I've got a book and I'm sitting here on the couch to, hang on a minute, I met Bob. Gee, he was interesting. Gosh, what about this and that? And your mind gets blown at these places. This is why you need to go to find your community in the astrological.
Yeah, and when we're talking about spending money, I mean, you were talking about like these 5 books, less than $100 US.
Yeah, that's
the cost of a good meal. Like, we're not talking about spending a lot of money here.
Invest in yourself.
Invest in yourself. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so my third point for how to get started as an astrologer is to actually invest in some world-class education. Mm-hmm. Now, the best place to learn astrology in 2023 or recently is at the Faculty of Astrological Studies in London. And they offer world-class training. There's 9 modules. After module 3, there's an exam. After module 6, there's an exam. After module 9, there's an exam, and you finally get the diploma. So each of these modules generally takes about 6 months. It is rigorous, but you learn everything. So if you are serious about learning astrology, I recommend that you take module 1 at the faculty and see how you go, because that will, I want to say, it separates the men from the boys, if I can say that, where you are going to learn absolutely everything, and you will be measured to a higher standard than any other astrological place that's global. So it really is world class.
And can you do this remotely? This doesn't
absolutely. You can do it distance learning. You can actually do it by correspondence or where you send emails back and forth. You can attend online Zoom classes if you wish, or you can go in person. So for anyone in North America, of course, you can do either the email stuff or attend the classes. And it's the only show in town. Yeah, I don't know.
And at what point did they learn about Xenu? No, just kidding. That's Scientology. Just kidding.
So they learn about what?
Xenu.
I don't know. But the point being that if you are interested and you want to have the best accreditations of astrology that's going today, that is it. And there's nothing else to compare.
Nothing else have credentials after your name.
Yes, nothing else compares. So that's the thing. You can be tinkering around with this and that and your local this and that, whatever. But technically, if you want to get the best astrological education, you have to go to the faculty.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got no questions about that.
Yeah, no, I fully, exactly. I'm self-taught, so
oh yeah,
I bow to the
yeah. No, nothing's cheap there. I mean, it's going to cost you, but you're going to get education that's you think, whoa.
Yeah, like if you actually consult and charge people for your astrological knowledge.
Yes, if you want to be a practicing
credentials.
astrologer, you don't want to be someone who's just, I read a book, now I'm an astrologer and I'm charging you $50.
No.
You want to be saying, well, I've got the best training available today, and therefore that's why I'm charging $500 for my consultations.
Absolutely.
Or whatever your consultations happen to be at the time.
Yeah.
But you get what you pay for, and that's my recommendation.
Yeah, and you have an amazing amount of astrological education. Like, this is what separates us, I believe, because I'm still what I would consider like a student astrologer. I'm a research astrologer. I'm a hobbyist. I have a vast library of books, and they're all organized by color. But I don't charge for my services. I don't feel qualified to do that. For me, I'm personally fascinated, and I love doing the research, but I don't feel qualified to consult. And this is why. This is because I don't have that investment in the education, and you do, and that's what's separates us.
Yeah. I mean, I got my original education at the South African School of Astrological Studies way back in the 80s, and that was a 3-year course, and that's where I learned everything I know today. And really, even now, some of these local classes and associations don't even teach the depth. They are just tinkering on the outskirts. It's just. It's in a way it's embarrassing. So if you want, to go deep, you need to go there. And that's what I recommend.
Yeah.
But it's a process. You're going to start with the books. You're going to get a few books.
Yeah.
And make sure your library's built on solid foundations. Then start moving out and joining some groups, go to a class or two, maybe go to a conference, see how you feel, and then eventually it will dawn on you that you need to stop mucking about and get some proper training. And that's when you'll join up with the faculty. So that's my recommendation.
Nice. I love it. So we've been talking about being a consulting astrologer all this time, but our listeners may or may not be interested in doing that. They might just be interested in, and not just as a research astrologer, but there are a ton of different types of astrology that you can actually go down, as we say, a rabbit hole of interest in. There are financial astrologers, which is a huge thing.
Yes.
Rockefeller famously said that, like, millionaires don't consult astrologers, billionaires do.
Yes.
This is 100 years ago they said this. And financial astrologers are still a thing, studying the cycles of financial crashes and booms and how this works.
We'll have an episode about that one day as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And one of the most practical applications of astrology to this day. There are people who study astrocartography, as we've talked about in the past, which is a super fascinating pursuit. People study the astrology of earthquakes.
Yes.
The astrology of serial killers. The astrology of all of the relationship astrology that's out there is fascinating.
There are many speciality areas you can go in. Once you've got the basics down and you're solid in your reading, you can branch out. And I often refer this to doctors.
Right.
Doctors, when they get trained, they can save your life. They know about this, that, and the other, and they can save your life. Yeah. But then they branch out, and one becomes a brain surgeon, and the other's a dermatologist.
Yeah.
And they go down their speciality routes. And astrologers do this too.
Exactly. That's a great, great comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever you find that you are fascinated with, that keeps you interested, that keeps you studying, that makes you want to learn more and to share your knowledge. Own it and carve out your niche.
Yes, if you're interested in, like Norma does new moon group, she does that every single month. She loves the moon.
Dana Gerhardt does her new moon readings, which are amazing.
There you go. Yeah. So, and if lunar astrology is your thing, go down that route.
Totally.
If you want to do medical astrology, go down that route.
It's huge, huge, huge.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, once you've got the basis, once you can read a chart and confidently, the sky's the limit astrologically. And as you're actually learning all this stuff, something will pique your interest, whether it's Chiron, whether it's aspect or medical stuff or whatever, politics, huge.
Yeah.
And you can go down and become a specialist within astrology in a certain area of astrology, which most astrologers become.
Yeah, there are minor planet specialists.
Yes.
There are stellar
Demetra
specialists.
George, asteroid goddess.
Totally. And such a wonderful writer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tons of different specialties that you can find and explore.
Yeah. So, and these these interests will pop up as you're learning your basic stuff. You think, ooh.
And that's one of the great things about going to a conference.
Yes,
is
you
that
get
you meet
exposed.
all these different people and you're like, oh, wow, I never actually thought that was interesting until you meet this person who's just obsessed with it. And that's, frequently you're like, whoa, if this person's obsessed with it and they're so intelligent and so interesting and so, committed to it, you kind of, get won over.
Well, this is it.
Yeah.
This is how I ended up doing the Oriental Planet, because it took my interest. And I thought, hang on a minute. People are always asking me about where's the money and what about love? Yeah. And that's the planet. And I just went down that route.
Right.
And explored it. And still to this day, continuously explore what's going on and how does that express itself.
Totally. So, there are some astrologers who are just like Pluto is their thing.
Yeah.
Like that's their thing, you know? Yeah.
It's there's many ways to skin this cat. Once you've got your basics, it really is. It's like, if you can cook a basic cake and it's the icing on the top.
Yeah.
How is it going to be birthday or chocolate or whatever?
Oh, what's your favorite kind of cake?
Probably just a vanilla sponge. I don't know.
Really?
I'm not really a cake person. No. Yeah. You?
Red velvet.
Oh, no, I'm not really a cake person, I'm afraid.
I like cheesecake too, though. But anyway.
Oh, cheesecake, of course.
Cheesecake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So having had our discussion here, I'm hoping this has answered the question from our super fans about how to get started. And if you're listening to, it's going to give you some tips on how to get started.
Yeah.
Once you start, there's no ending. It becomes a way of life.
Yeah.
So if you feel you've had some value in this podcast episode, please do share it with anyone who would be interested. If you have any questions for us, you can email us at starzology@gmail.com. So I want to thank Arwynne for being here once more.
Thank you, Alison. This has been great.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. And so this is from me, Alison Price, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.